Hello and welcome to the OTB channel. File sharing between different computers is something that we all do on occasion, whether it be sharing a file to another Linux box or to a Windows or Mac system. Well, luckily the process is simplicity itself these days, and in this video I'm going to show you 3 graphical applications that I use all the time to get the job done. See you after the intro. Okay, welcome back. So file sharing, obviously within Linux, we've been able to share files between other Linux boxes and even Windows and Mac boxes for many years now. And I suppose the conventional way of doing it is to set up a Samba network or an NFS network and to do it like that. But to be honest, most of the time when it comes to file sharing, that's a little bit like overkill. You might just have a file on your laptop that you need to get to your desktop. Do you really need to go through the whole process of setting up a Samba server, configuring your smb.conf, setting up a Samba password, etc., etc., etc.? Not that that's particularly onerous, but personally, I tend not to run a Samba network simply because the occasions when I'm going to send a file or share a file to another of my computers, they're quite rare. It's just on occasion when I'm working on something, for instance, on my laptop, and I think, right, I'll just send that over to my desktop, that I need something simpler. Well, when I was doing the review of Linux Mint the other day, and they were heralding the new Warpinator app, I've actually been using that for a little while now. Luckily, on Arch Linux, it's already in the AUR, and I can confirm that the Git version builds absolutely great with Yay. So what I wanted to do today was to have a look at Warpinator, just briefly, and then a couple of alternatives that I personally use for, firstly, sharing files between other Linux boxes, but also sharing files with a Windows laptop that I have. And I'm also going to look at how you can go beyond your immediate network and use a graphical application for sharing files to a remote computer, for instance, a server. So just 3 apps, and they're all graphical. Now, before anybody says in the comments, hey, you can do all this from the command line really simply, I know that. However, sometimes you just want to launch a graphical application and click a few buttons to get it done. I know that I do. I'm all for easy. So let's go over to the virtual machine of Linux Mint that I installed the other day, and let's start off by taking a look at Warpinator and seeing how fast and functional it actually is. Right, so you should see in front of you my virtual machine of Linux Mint XFCE in front of you. And I'm just going to use this as a way of demonstrating these file sharing applications between this virtual machine and my Arch Linux box that the virtual machine is running on. They've set up as a bridge network, so they're essentially, as far as the network is concerned, like 2 separate items on that network. Clearly, the file transfers are going to be quite fast because my workstation is plugged directly into the router by a LAN cable, and if you were doing this over wireless, it's going to take a little bit longer, but not hugely so. So, before I start, I said the likes of Samba is actually overkill if you just want to transfer a single file. That's clearly not the case if you've got something like a server that you want to connect to all the time, or you have a NAS box, then you are going to go through the process of setting up a Samba server and permanently mounting it perhaps in your F-stab. Nevertheless, I mean, what I did on here, if I just opened a file manager, I set up a Samba network earlier on my Arch box, and I put a file in there, and you can see that from my Mint box, it's dead easy. I just go through the file manager and click on Browse Network and connect to it. I've got the Arch Linux ISO there. That's actually sitting on my Arch box at the moment. And if I wanted to bring this over to the Mint box, well, I can just drag and drop. It's around 647 megs, and da-da, it does it. So all good. If you were thinking, well, what's the use of even using a file sharing application? If I just want to share a single file, I just use a USB stick and plug it into one computer, save it onto the USB stick, and transfer it to the other computer using that stick. Well, you've already seen it takes much longer to do it that way. So file sharing over a network is simple. So that's a Samba share. However, do we really want to have a Samba share just for the odd file that we're sharing? Well, let's see what Warpinator can do for us. So I'm going to search for that app here and open it. And I'm going to go back. It's already spotted my my Arch box from the last time I used this. But hey-ho, that's all right. You haven't got a huge amount of preferences here. I mean, if I open the preferences dialog, show an icon in the notification area, start with the main window open, where do you want to save them to? I notice that when you do install Warpinator, even on Arch, it creates a folder called Warpinator, so that makes things easy. Require approval before accepting files, require approval when files would be overwritten, and display a notification when someone sends or tries to send you files. And it has a default port number there, and you can obviously change the port if you need to. Clearly, if you're running a firewall, you'll need to make sure that that port is open on your network. So let me just open Warpinator now on my Arch box, and what I'll do is I'll transfer this file again from my Arch box into the Warpinator folder on this Mint box, and I'll show you just how fast it can take. I get a little notification up here. Would I like to accept the file that's being sent to me? Yes, okay. And it's been initialized. And you can see the progress there of it being sent. And let me open up the home folder. Oops, Warpinator. And there it is. Okay, so all good. And I can clear what's in there straightforwardly. If I want to send that file back, I'll show it you the other way around. I hit send file. I hit browse. I'll go to my desktop where that ISO is. I'll click send. You're seeing the notification that's actually on my Arch box there, so I'll accept that. And it's sending it back to Arch. That is all there is to it. What a great little file sharing application this is. The trouble is, it's still quite restricted. It's obviously available for Linux Mint, and I'm assuming there's a version available for Linux Mint Debian Edition as well. And if that's the case, you will be able to install it on standard Debian. But go into the GitHub page here. They do provide directions from building it from source. You'll see here it's a Python application. So technically, you could install it on any Linux system. So that's Warpinator, and I'm really impressed with it after playing around with it over the last month or so. But it is restricted. It's not widely available as yet on every distro, although I'm sure that will eventually be the case. But of more concern, it's only Linux to Linux. So if you do have a Windows box and you want to share files between your Linux box and your Windows box, it's not going to do the job. So another little application that I've been using for a while, which is Windows compatible, is called LangShare. Let me just take you over and show you that. Okay, so you should be able to see my Mint desktop in front of you now, and I've got the GitHub page for LangShare open. Now, it's another really simple application. Works in much the same way. You don't have to really configure any servers. But the thing is, it's cross-platform. It's built using the Qt framework, and it can be installed on Linux or on Windows. So apparently there's an app image available, but when I clicked share, all I can actually see is a deb file and an exe file for Windows. So what I did on Linux Mint, I just installed a deb file, downloaded and installed a deb file, and this is what you get. Once again, a really straightforward and plain interface. We can go into settings, and you've got even less options here. So general, OTB, VirtualBox. It creates a downloads directory anyway when you install it, called LangShare Downloads, which I have here, and you'll see there's nothing in it at the moment. And then you have a little bit about the network, what the broadcast port is, what the transfer port is, etc., etc. And again, all you would do was make sure that if you've got a firewall running on your internal network, make sure that those ports are open. Now, just as a little bit of an experiment to show you how it works here, I have a Windows box open on my desktop. It's actually one of my little ThinkPads, and it dual boots Windows. And I'm going to send a file over the wireless network. So this is likely to be a little bit slower. So rather than sending a 650 meg ISO, the Arch Linux ISO, I'm going to send the one here that you can see that I've already got on my desktop. It's actually the Kdenlive app image. So I'm just going to pick that now from my Windows box. I'll send it back, of course, once we've sorted out how this works. And I'm sending it across. And you should see it transferring now. No notification this time. It just comes across. Perhaps a little bit slower than Warpinator, but not a huge amount to it. Right, let me just check. And there you can see the Kdenlive app image is actually saved in this folder, LangShare Downloads. So let's send that file back over wireless. So send files. Let's pick our desktop. And let's pick the Kdenlive image. Click open. This LAN receiver comes up, and as you can see, my Windows desktop has been recognized, and I click send. And you can see the progress in the top. And that's all there is to it. What I like about this app is it's more widely available at the moment. So Windows, Debian, Arch, you can certainly get it for those distributions and that operating system, Windows. Not Mac compatible as far as I know, but it works pretty well. So if you can't get hold of Warpinator, LangShare is another option. And what I will do is I'll put the URLs to the GitHub pages for both Warpinator and LangShare in the video description. So I really like LangShare for the fact that it's cross-compatible. Warpinator is a quick fix, but LangShare has got a little bit more to it, I think, in terms of being able to share with Windows and Linux boxes. But it's just as simple, so pick your poison. The trouble with all of these apps, or both of the apps that I've looked at so far, they're only concerned with internal networks. How do you go about sharing files with remote machines. So, for instance, I talked or I mentioned last week that I've recently set up a website, and I did that on a VPS, and I have SSH root access. Now, I could, of course, use the command line and share everything through SCP or SFTP on the command line, but I'm lazy again, and if I can get a graphical environment to do it, I will do. And for this, I'm going to very briefly show the venerable Filzilla, which I've been using for many years, and I see no reason to change. So we're back at the Mint desktop, and you can see Filzilla is launched there. Now, I know it's been around for a long time, but it does the job. And if you want to share outside of your home network, you really need a secure connection. And this is where SSH is at its best. Now, I tend to enable my SSH server on all of my machines. And of course, Windows loves Linux now, so it's easy to set up an SSH server on a Windows box as well. You can also, of course, set it up on a Mac. It's a Unix-like operating system, so that's not a problem. And Filzilla, as well as using the old-fashioned FTP, can use SFTP, which is the Secure File Transfer Protocol. Now, you can do this over the command line, but I've just found it easier if I want to connect to a remote box to do it this way. So, how do you go about configuring Filzilla? Well, you have got a lot of options in settings. Most of them are set to sensible defaults. You can pick FTP, you can pick SFTP, and set your own bits and pieces in here. But the key thing for me is you have the option to set up sites. And here on my Mint box, I've set up one site. And that's to me on my Arch box. I've inputted the IP address of my Arch box. I've set the protocol to use as SFTP. You can use standard FTP if you want, but I don't see why you would. And I've loaded my SSH key on here, so I won't even need to enter a password. So let me just cancel here. You don't need to set up a site, of course. You can just enter the host IP there, the username for the account that you're going to go to, the password, the port, which is usually 22 on SSH, unless you've set a custom port, and then you just hit quick connect. But if you've already set up a site, you just use this drop-down box here to drop down the sites that you've set up, and I click on Steve. And what you'll see here is on the left, I have this Mint box here. The folder, you've got the full folder structure there, and I've got it currently highlighted on the desktop where I have got these two files, the Arch Linux ISO and the Kden Live ISO. Over here, on the right-hand side, you have my Arch box, and I've created a directory just called Files. All I need to do is to click on the file that I want to transfer, and it's copying across. And you can see now it's there. If I even take this big Arch Linux ISO, 650 megs, you can see how fast that works. Now, because this enables you to do key-based authentication as well, it's absolutely secure if you're going to use it in a server environment. So when I do connect to my remote server, I have used Filzilla to transfer various files across to the server, which I can then work with. So very flexible, multi-platform. You can use it for, well, you can use it on your internal network, or you can use it for remote machines as well. Right, so that's 3 GUI applications for file sharing from a Linux box. All really straightforward to use, nice and simple, choose your poison. It depends what your network consists of and whether or not you need to share files with remote boxes over the internet. So this was just a quick video which was sparked by seeing Warpinator, which I think is a really great app. So before I go, I've been pretty busy over the last few weeks, as you know. I created a website, and I actually, my intention was to start a Patreon page as well when I get to 10,000 subs. Now, I'm not there yet, which is why I haven't mentioned it. However, I was preempted a little bit. I'd created the basic framework, and then I got the shock of my life the other day when Entropy UK became my first Patreon before I'd even mentioned it. So many thanks, guys. I will launch the Patreon thing properly, probably at the next video, because this is number 100. And so this is something of a landmark. But guys, look after yourself. Have a great weekend. I'll see you tomorrow anyway. And thanks for watching.